Hello. Let's see how we interpret aspect patterns in vibrational astrology, and also let's look at the importance of the orbs of the aspects. So whether you are new to vibrational astrology or you are a professional vibrational astrologer or anywhere in between, we can learn by looking at the charts of people. And what I have here is a famous person, because famous people are good for these kind of lessons because we're familiar with them and we can relate to what we're saying about them. So this happens to be Joe Biden, who was a vice president in the United States, and I'm making this video on October 19, 2020, about 2 weeks before an election where he's running for president. So it's easy to get information on Joe Biden. Many of you are already familiar with him, so we'll just use his chart because he's well known. The unfortunate thing about Joe Biden is that his birth data is only A accuracy, means it's not from a birth certificate or birth record. He told an astrologer years ago that he was born at 8:30 in the morning. So hopefully it's accurate. We need to keep that in mind. And this will also be a lesson in being aware of problems with inaccurate birth times. Now, here is the 7 vibration chart of Joe Biden, also known as 7th harmonic chart, also known as the Saptamsa chart. And in vibrational astrology, we interpret the aspect patterns. We do not put very much emphasis on the zodiac signs or the house placements in the vibrational chart. We're mostly interested in these aspect patterns. Do you see 3 planets or more connected together in an aspect pattern? Well, one that you'll see is Uranus is quincunx Venus. Venus is sextile Pluto. Pluto is square Uranus. Do you see any others? There's one that looks a little bit subtle, but is important. And one of the reasons why it's subtle is because it's easy to overlook the conjunctions, because you don't see this big line going across the chart wheel. So what conjunctions do you see? Now, in vibrational astrology, we use this very large orb for conjunctions, 16 degrees. And if the orb is within about half of that, about 8 degrees, 8 to 10 degrees, it's solidly there. And as the orb gets smaller and smaller and smaller, the power of the aspect gets stronger, which is a common idea. But in vibrational astrology, we put a lot of emphasis on the orbs. It tells us exactly how important this configuration is to the person, how powerful it is. So not only do you see what is going on with a person, but you see how strong it is. So what conjunctions do you see? And do you see a conjunction that aspects a 3rd planet? Do you see it? It's easy to overlook, but the sun and moon are conjunct with a 6-degree orb. 6 degrees and 12 degrees of Scorpio. 6-degree orb, it's there. Not extremely strong, and we're going to talk about this. What does it mean to have 2 planets conjunct with a 6-degree orb? Now, but before we get into that, what is the 3rd planet? It's the red lines going to Saturn. You see that the moon has a red line going to Saturn, and the sun has a very, very thin red line. You know, I'm doing this, as a tutorial video, which goes from my resolution of my screen to your screen, and it may not be as clear on your screen, your device, as it is on mine, so maybe you can't even see it, in which case my question isn't very fair. But the sun and moon are both square Saturn. Sun, extremely weak. The thickness of the line tells us how strong it is. Moon, you can see the line, it's there. Not extremely strong, but it's there. Bottom line is that Joe Biden has a weak Sun, Moon, Saturn. Weak to moderate Sun, Moon, Saturn configuration in the 7 vibe chart. What does it mean? Okay? When you have 3 planets connected, it creates a theme. It creates a storyline in the person's life. but it's weak to moderate. It's a mild storyline. It means it's not a conspicuously strong part of the person's life, but it's good to know things that are not the strongest thing in your life, that you have some interest in, that you need a little bit of. And when it's a 3-planet configuration, it means you need a little bit of it regularly. Let me say that again. If you have 3 or more planets connected together, it's a regular theme, something that you need to be involved with periodically. If it's only 2 planets, it's like a characteristic. It's like saying you're tall or you're short. It's just a characteristic. But when it's 3 planets or more, it's like a circuit. It becomes a story in your life. Now the orbs are weak in this case. It means it's a weak story, but it's a story, not just a trait. By story, I mean something you need to do. It's an activity. It's an engagement in your life. So vibrational astrology is very specific. It's telling us that Joe Biden has a mild engagement in his life, a mild activity, something that he's engaged with, of the quality of sun and moon, square Saturn in 7th vibration. What does that mean? Okay, if you are a student or a professional level in vibrational astrology, you know that aspects from Saturn in the 7th vibration are very strong. They have a very clear effect because 7th vibration makes us quiet, makes us go within, deep, go underneath the surface of things, quiet, mature, introspective. And Saturn wants to get to the essence. Well, it's, you might say, easy to get to the essence, to the core, when you're quiet. So when Saturn is involved in 7th vibration, there is a sincerity and a pulling away from the parties, a pulling away from all the promotion and hoopla, the razzmatazz out there, and you're pulling away. So this is an odd combination for a politician. Instead of Joe Biden consistently being a promoter, an advertiser, having this theatrical quality, he might also have that from something else in his chart, but this is telling us he needs to pull away, to be quiet. And it's affecting his sun and moon, which are obviously extremely important. It's like who he is and what his soul is. This tells us that the soul of Joe Biden, the lifestyle, the world in which he is comfortable and which he wants to live in, sun and moon is what you are, sun. Moon is your heritage, your lineage. He wants to be in a heritage, a lineage, a way of life that's quiet, that's sincere, that's not lost in the hustle and bustle of daily life, and where you can get lost in that commotion, to pull away. Okay? So, and as always in my videos on especially about politics, let's not think about whether we like Joe Biden or dislike Joe Biden. Seems like when people get into politics, automatically they're turned into these cartoon characters. Let's just think of him as a person, regardless of anything with politics. Okay? Just, he's a person. Okay? So, what does that make you think of? What images do you get? Sun, Moon, Saturn. It makes me think somebody who takes a walk in the evening. It's nighttime, sun is set, and they take a little walk. That is a mild form of pulling away. It's not some deep, strong thing like you go to a Zen Buddhist retreat or something for 3 days and you like fast through the whole thing or something, or you're some hermit and you don't see people for a week at a time. It's a weak pattern, but it's a configuration which means it's regular, which means he would go for a walk almost every evening, or quietly read, or live in a quiet suburban to almost rural environment where you can get away from things. So this is almost a liability for somebody in politics in a way that they withdraw. At the same time, it can help because it can give a kind of sincerity and depth. Every astrological configuration has its pluses and minuses. And it's interesting, during this 2020 campaign season, he has been criticized for, as people have been saying, living in his basement. We're having this pandemic, worldwide pandemic, and he's really drawn away. We're not surprised when we see the Sun, Moon, Saturn. But on a lifestyle level, regardless of the pandemic, regardless of politics, I looked at this configuration and it reminded me of something that I know about Joe Biden. I don't know a lot about it, but there's something we know about him, right? He's a Democrat. He's been a senator for decades. He's had some very difficult, traumatic experiences, deaths in his family. What else do we know? This Sun, Moon, Saturn brought to my mind something that's commonly known about Joe Biden. And I thought to myself, wow, I bet that's really important to him. You know what it is? That he's Catholic. That he's Catholic. That he happened to be brought up Catholic. And I kind of remember that. I was fairly sure he was Catholic. Wasn't even certain of it. And I saw that configuration. I thought, wait, Catholic, if he's Catholic, I bet he really invests a lot of energy into being Catholic. Like, maybe he goes to church every week, not just because it looks good politically, but because it would be quiet. I was brought up Catholic, and in the United States, and what I remember is the masses were like not some big exciting thing. We didn't have like charged up gospel music or fiery sermons, and this kind of thing. It was a quiet kind of thing, very humble, not much drama to it. Every church is different. But on the whole, Catholic masses and activities tend to have this quality. That's perfect for a weak Sun, Moon, Saturn, and 7 vibration. Just chill out, man. Just get quiet, and doesn't have to be some big drama thing. Just get away. Just kind of collect your thoughts. So I often say to people, feel the chart. Don't just interpret it with your head, like memorize a bunch of facts. Feel Sun, Moon, Saturn. Getting quiet, pulling together. Nothing dramatic. It's a weak pattern. Weak. It's not the 6-degree orb on the conjunction. None of the squares are super strong. One of them is just barely within orb. That thin Sun, square Saturn. You just feel this is a weak pattern. You don't have to worry about all the little details. Just think to yourself, a weak 7 vibration. Don't worry so much about which planet is squared, which 2 planets. Just get the basic feeling. Sun, Moon, Saturn in a weak 7 vibration. That's all you have to do. Those other details matter, but you can get lost in that. Just think, what's the basic thing I'm talking about? A pulling away, a quiet. So I saw that and I thought, wow, I bet he's really into this Catholic thing. So I Googled around and I found articles like this one, How Joe Biden's Faith Shapes His Politics, at npr.org. And in this article, it says that he keeps a rosary in his pocket all the time. He's got this rosary with him all the time. And that he does go to church every Sunday. And I'm looking at this particular mass that he's at. Nothing stunning, dramatic about it. One thing about Catholic churches, they often do have a little bit of stained glass, a little bit of this mystic feeling to get really soulful. Enough for a weak Sun, Moon, Saturn. But it means he needs to pull away. And when I saw that note about him having a rosary in his pocket, it said to me that this is really important to him. That's why he has it. The wonderful thing about vibrational astrology is that you understand the person. Now I understand why he's got that rosary in his pocket. I understand it completely. It's a real thing. It doesn't have to do with the fact he's a public person in the Senate, whatever. It's just who he is. And I know how this Catholic world fulfills something for him, to pull away, to get deeper, to get more thoughtful, and draw himself out of all that activity. So there it is, my friends, how you can understand somebody. And again, when you're looking at this famous people, especially in politics, I highly recommend just think about the person. Don't worry about the politics. Don't worry about whether you like the Democrats or the Republicans and all this stuff. Things work out in certain ways, but just think about the person. Now, what we can do, by the way, one more thing, is the 7 vibration configuration here. We notice that Moon is at 6, Sun is at 12. Squares have only a 4-degree orb, 1/4 of the 16-degree for conjunctions. So the fact that Saturn is within orb to both means it's in the middle, 6 degrees. Moon is at 6, Saturn at 9, Sun at 12. Now this gets a little more advanced in the vibrational astrology. But what you can do is you can double the vibration, go from 7 to 14, and that makes the aspects go down, what we call an octave. So you make the chart go up an octave from 7 to 14, and the square, which is 1/4, will go down to 1/2. And it will make the Saturn opposition the Sun and Moon. And then I want to see what happens to the relationship of the Saturn to Sun Moon. So I'll go back to Biden's natal chart, and I will select the 14 vibration. And here is the Saturn opposition the Sun and Moon. There it is. And again, the lines will have the same basic thickness. There's that one skinny line, Sun to Saturn, and there's a little bit thicker line of Sun to Moon. So the quality of the aspects is retained as we go through these, as we go up the octaves. Now I'm going to look at the midpoints. So I go over here to midpoints. I'm looking at midpoints in the 14 vibration, and there it is, Saturn opposition Sun Moon, 28-minute orb. So if I go back to the wheel, it's telling me that the Saturn is right at the midpoint with about a 1/2 degree orb. This strengthens it. The midpoint structure strengthens it. So this tells me he really does need to pull away. If he doesn't, he'll just feel scattered. He might feel like anxiety or confusion or a lack of purpose in his life. He'll feel a little bit unhinged. He needs to pull away regularly. Not extremely. It doesn't have to be every single day. Going to Mass every Sunday is a good practice for this, and helps with it, as well as some other things, some quiet time in the evenings, etc. So there you have it. Also, just studying what the policies are, reading through things, all those times when you're quiet and engaged are good activities for him. And practices and disciplines and rituals work very well for Joe Biden. Now, just for fun, let's look at Donald Trump, who we have AA data for, from the birth certificate, which is even better. By the way, before I go into Trump, just thought occurred to me, that this configuration makes so much sense, inclines me to believe that this time is probably accurate. It's probably not definitely, because you can get similar effects at other times of the day, but the birth time is probably accurate. So very often with vibrational astrology, we get a sense of whether the chart is right because these configurations move fast. Let me show you. If I move this 1 hour, I go into time adjust. and move it 1 hour, say, forward, look at how the configuration has changed. Now the moon Saturn is strong. If I go 2 hours, there's the sun and moon, and now it's only a weak sun Saturn, and the moon's not involved in the same way. It's changed. Now sun and moon are strong. Anyway, the configuration changes within a few hours. Okay, now let's look at Donald Trump just for fun and see if it makes sense. Since we've done that, it will give us another example of interpreting these configurations and paying attention to what the orbs are. Now, do you see a 3-planet configuration in Donald Trump's 7 vibration chart? This is his 7 vibration chart, also known as a Saptamsa chart or 7th harmonic chart. Do you see it? This one also involves a conjunction. So if 2 planets aspect a 3rd planet, there's 2 planets that are conjunct, and both are with an orb, that's a 3-planet configuration. And here it is, the Mars and Jupiter are conjunct, and they're both with an orb of trining Uranus. Pluto is also involved a little bit, but the Pluto, Jupiter is out of orb. So we want all 3 planets to be within orb. And the Mars, Jupiter, and Uranus are all within orb. Now, before we interpret this, how can we see it more clearly? How can we see more clearly what the orbs are? Because these are trines, we could multiply 7 times 3, and it will turn the trine into conjunctions. It'll turn the Uranus and Pluto trine the Mars, Jupiter to conjunction. Because when you multiply by 3, it takes the 3 aspects and reduces them back to conjunction. So as you go up in your harmonic chart, or your vibrational chart as I like to call it, as you multiply by 3, the aspects go down by 3. And 3 divided by 3 is 1. So the trines turn into conjunctions. Maybe I'm making this sound more complicated than it is. But anyway, that's what's happening. Trines will turn into conjunctions when you multiply by 3. So here's his 21 vibration chart. And sure enough, the Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, and Pluto are now conjunct. And we can also see the orbs. Jupiter to Uranus is 9 degrees. Uranus to Mars is 7 degrees. Mars to Pluto is 8 degrees. Pretty equally spread. And now I will look at the midpoints to see if Uranus is at Mars, Jupiter, and is Mars at Uranus, Pluto. Let's look at the midpoints. And I'll pull up the pop-up wheel so we can remember what we're talking about here. Is Uranus at Mars, Jupiter? Yes, very weakly, 1 degree, 22 minutes. We only allow 1.5 degree orb. If it's over a degree, it's getting weak, so that's very weak. And is the Mars at Uranus, Pluto about a degree, 1 degree, 1 minute? So there's 2 fairly weak midpoint structures pulling together Jupiter, Uranus, Mars, Pluto. So that's going to strengthen it. It's supported by midpoint structures. Let's go back to the 7 vibration, and now we will interpret it. What does it mean to have a weak Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto in 7 vibration? 4 planets, weakly connected. Weakly connected because, well, you know, the Mars-Uranus is actually pretty strong. It's only a 2 degree orb. So the Mars trine Uranus is strong. Uranus conjunct Pluto, 5 degrees. It's there. Mars trine Pluto, not that weak either. The Mars-Uranus-Pluto part of this is really the strongest. Jupiter is more weakly. Jupiter's strong to Mars. Anyway, it spreads around a little bit. What does it mean? Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto in 7 vibration. If you've been studying vibrational astrology for a while, you know I made a series of videos on athletes. The greatest athletes, Michael Jordan, the great basketball player, all these great athletes, and they have these kind of configurations. Power planets like Mars, Jupiter, in 7 vibration, bring power into this focused activity. So they give this kind of controlled power. They give this desire to stabilize, to get quiet, and then boom. Now, we don't think of Donald Trump as particularly quiet. And he's got, I've just made another video about him. It's a very strong 11 vibration. But people are complex and they have different sides to themselves. So I did some searching about Donald Trump, and I found out he was a baseball player. Did you know this? He played baseball, and he was very good. Of course, according to Trump, he was fantastic, and he could play pro and everything. But he was a darn good baseball player. Let's just put it that way. Very, very good baseball player. He played in high school. I don't think he played at the college level, but he was very, very good. He played on the team, played first base, and he was a good player. And he had potential. Let's just put it that way. That's what this shows. Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto. And to this day, he wears the baseball hat. Make America great again, the red hat and all that. He's got an affinity for this kind of thing. If the pattern was stronger, the orbs were smaller, he might have gone into athletics. But it's a weaker pattern, not super strong, and it means he's good at this. He's got this kind of enthusiasm and energy, vitality to really make things happen and to get in there and work with the team. Could be a good team player, believe it or not. So there it is. That's a part of him. And I think it's part of his love of the American culture, of this, get down to it and be productive and that kind of thing. He loves sports. He really does. He loves sports, and he talks about how he supported different teams and different things. That, when we think of Joe Biden, do you think of him loving sports, of, having this kind of athletic side to himself? I don't know, maybe he does, but it doesn't, it's not as obvious. It's not as evident, not as much a part of who he is. Just like the Sun, Moon, Saturn in Biden, it's not so obvious in Trump. And we can see the energy flow of people. And we can see things that are strong, and we can see things that are more mild. And those mild things are still a part of the person. At one point I was reading about Trump and baseball, and he said that, fortunately he didn't go into athletics, and he went into real estate instead. Actually, he's right about that. Because this kind of energy is also good for managing in enterprises and so on. And we can go up to the 21 vibration. Let's look at that again. And there's something interesting here, which I found a little bit surprising. He has a Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn configuration in the 21 vibration. See this Mercury square Jupiter, Saturn right in the middle with these red lines? It's a little hard to see because there's so many lines going on here. But it's Saturn. That's a semi-square, 45 degrees to Mercury and Jupiter. If we look at the midpoints, Saturn is at the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint, 1 degree, 8 minutes, not super strong. What does that mean, that he has a Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter in a 21 vibration, 7 base vibration? That means strategy. He's good at strategizing, planning, figuring out a strategy to win. So he is good at that. He hasn't paid attention to the science of the coronavirus and so on. He's kind of goes his own way with a lot of things, but he is very good at strategizing and planning, and this is involved in his real estate plans and all these things. So he's smart, actually. Now, if you're a big Trump fan, you say, of course he's smart. I know that. But if you really dislike Trump, you might say, oh, he's not smart. He's crazy, But think about people realistically. People are complicated. And here's an interesting article. let me go to, sorry, I didn't mean to go there. Let me go to here by Harry Reid, an article where he was interviewed, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, talking about, this is, I don't know when this article is, October 12, 2019. This is about a year ago from when I'm making this video. So in 2019, in October, he's saying, listen to this quote. This interviewer quotes Harry Reid. "I used to think that Donald Trump was not too smart. I certainly don't believe that anymore." Reid, a Nevada Democrat who served in Congress for decades until his retirement in 26, told David Axelrod, etc. So this Democratic senator is thinking, this Trump, he's not the brightest light in the world with his, theatrics and all this stuff. And after a while, he begins to realize, the guy's really smart. And when we run against him, we need to keep that in mind. And this is the smarts. The smarts in terms of strategizing, planning, being shrewd, being clever, having understanding. And when it comes to things like the coronavirus, where Trump has disagreed with the greatest scientists, I mean, I hope nobody throws tomatoes at their computer screen if you don't think that's true. But that side of Trump, where he's not focused on the scientific evidence, how could that be smart? Well, he probably understands a lot more about this than it looks. And there's some evidence that he did know that the coronavirus is really dangerous, and he thought he would scare people, or he had some kind of strategy. Now, maybe his strategy proved to be terrible, and people are dying as a result of it. Having something in your chart doesn't mean it's perfect. All I'm saying is that he thinks through things pretty darn well, and he comes up with some clever ideas. Other things in his chart, I've discussed in another video about his 43 vibration, and especially and his 8 vibration with all the Jupiter-Pluto, those are causing the problems. It's not his mental acuity so much. It's his grandiosity going overboard. That's what's creating the problem. Okay, so he's probably smarter than it seems to some people, which is what Harry Reid had concluded. Okay, main thing I want to do here is not get into debates about political people, because, here in America we love to fight about everything and have our favorites and all that stuff. Main thing I want to do is the astrology. Can you see? Let's not lose sight of the forest by getting lost in the trees. Can you see? Let's go back to Donald Trump's 7 vibration, the Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto 7 vibration. And the fact he did play baseball well, not maybe professional level, whatever, and his engagement, his love of sports and dynamic activities. And when you go to Biden's chart, the Catholic in Biden, you see it in that Sun, Moon, Saturn. So when you get really good in vibrational astrology, you can see the lifestyle choices that work for the person. And you can see how big of a part they play in the person's life. And what amazes me with vibrational astrology is I will see something and I will think, oh my gosh, this person must have an interest in something. Oh my gosh, Donald Trump really, not Donald Trump, Joe Biden really needs to get away. I bet he really likes this Catholic thing. And I find out it's true. Well, it's just one case, a little anecdotal story. But you will see it over and over and over again, how well you can see into the heart and soul of people. I hope that makes sense and helps you understand how we look at planetary configurations and see how they function in the person's life. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.